Michael Flynn discuss sanctions on Russia with its ambassador. Michael Flynn discuss sanctions on Russia with its ambassador. Photo Susan Walt, STF retired Gen. Michael Flynn was one of the first and most high-profile supporters of presidential candidate Donald Trump. Retired Gen. Michael Flynn was one of the first and most high-profile supporters of presidential candidate Donald Trump. Photo George Frey, stringer Michael Flynn pleads guilty to lying to FBI in Russia. Pro-Washington former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty Friday to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and, in an ominous sign for the White House, said he is cooperating in the ongoing probe of possible coordination between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin to influence the 2016 election. When Flynn was forced out of the White House in February, officials said he had misled the administration, including Vice President Mike Pence, about his contacts with Kislyak. But court records and people familiar with the contacts indicated he was acting in consultation with senior Trump transition officials, including President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, in his dealings with the diplomat. Flynn's plea revealed that he was in touch with senior Trump transition officials before and after his communications with the ambassador. The pre-inauguration communications with Kislyak involved efforts to blunt Obama administration policy decisions on sanctions on Russia and a UN resolution on Israel potential violations of a rarely enforced law. Flynn said in a statement, "It has been extraordinarily painful to endure these many months of false accusations of treason and other outrageous acts. Such false accusations are contrary to everything I have ever done and stood for. I recognize that the actions I acknowledged in court today were wrong, and, through my faith in God, I am working to set things right. My guilty plea and agreement to cooperate with the special counsel's office reflect a decision I made in the best interests of my family and of our country. I accept full responsibility for my actions." Flynn admitted in his plea that he lied to the FBI about several December conversations with Kislyak. In one, on Deck 22, he contacted the Russian ambassador about the incoming administration's opposition to a UN resolution condemning Israeli settlements as illegal and requested that Russia vote against or delay it, court records say. The ambassador later called back and indicated Russia would not vote against it, the records say. In another conversation, on December 29, Flynn called the ambassador to ask Russia not to escalate an ongoing feud over sanctions imposed by the Obama administration, court records say. The ambassador later called back and said Russia had chosen not to retaliate, the records say. Flynn admitted as a part of his plea that when the FBI asked him on Jan. 24, 4 days after Trump was inaugurated about his dealings with the Russians, he did not truthfully describe the interactions. But perhaps more interestingly, he said others in the transition knew he was in contact with Kislyak. Flynn admitted that before speaking with the ambassador, he called a senior transition official, whose name is not listed in court records, at the Mar-a-Lago resort on Deck 29 to discuss what, if anything, to communicate to the Russian ambassador about the U.S. sanctions, and learned that transition members did not want Russia to escalate the situation. And the ambassador later informed him Russia would not retaliate, Flynn told senior members of the transition team, court records say. The records say that a very senior member of the presidential transition team directed Flynn to contact officials from foreign governments, including Russia, about the UN resolution on Israel. That official is also not named, but people familiar with the matter said it refers to Kushner. According to one transition team official, Kushner told Flynn that blocking the resolution was a top priority of the president-elect. Abby Lowell, Kushner's attorney, declined to comment. White House response: It is unclear what else Flynn might have told special counsel Robert Mueller III's team about his work for the administration and interactions with Russians which could have significant consequences for the investigation. Flynn is the highest-profile Trump ally and the first aide who worked in the White House to face charges in Mueller's investigation. Trump developed a close rapport with Flynn on the campaign trail. Outside the courthouse Friday, a small group of protesters shouted "Lock him up" at Flynn as he left the building. The Washington Post reported in February that Flynn had privately discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia with that country's ambassador before Trump took office, contrary to public assertions by Trump officials. Soon after that, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates warned the White House that the National Security Advisor might be susceptible to Russian blackmail because he had misled senior officials. Flynn was forced to resign, but after that, Trump said that his ouster might have been a mistake. Trump's request of then FBI Director James Comey to be lenient with Flynn has also come under scrutiny by the special counsel, and Flynn's cooperation could prove important to Mueller's ongoing probe of whether the president attempted to obstruct justice. Trump has said previously that he did not direct Flynn to discuss sanctions with the Russian ambassador, but that he would have directed him because that's his job. There is a law, the Logan Act, that bars U.S. citizens from interfering in diplomatic disputes with another country. But the statute has not been used in a prosecution in modern history, and it would not be uncommon for incoming administrations to interface with foreign governments with whom they will soon have to work. In a statement on Flynn's guilty plea, White House lawyer Ty Cobb said the false statements involved mirror the false statements to White House officials which resulted in his resignation in February of this year. Nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anyone other than Mr. Flynn. The conclusion of this phase of the special counsel's work demonstrates again that the special counsel is moving with all deliberate speed and clears the way for a prompt and reasonable conclusion. In recent weeks, Trump's attorneys have expected Flynn to plead guilty, particularly after one of Flynn's attorneys, Robert Kellner, said he could no longer communicate about the probe with Trump's lawyers. On what he charged Flynn's negotiations to cooperate with Mueller's team began in earnest early last month, according to two people briefed on the discussions. At some point, Mueller's investigators warned Flynn's attorneys that they planned to indict Flynn and also could charge his son, according to the two people, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private deliberations. Flynn's attorneys, Kellner and Stephen Anthony, provided a proffer of what information Flynn could provide, and then Flynn met with Mueller's team. As part of Flynn's negotiations, his son, Michael G. Flynn, is not expected to be charged, according to a person with knowledge of the talks. In his agreement, Flynn acknowledged lying in his foreign agent disclosure forms when he claimed that he did not know the extent of the Turkish government's involvement in a contract his firm had obtained, and when he claimed that an op he wrote encouraging the U.S. government to expel a rebel cleric and enemy of the Turkish president was at his own initiative. The maximum penalty for making a false statement is 5 years in prison, though both sides said Flynn would face a recommended sentence of up to 6 months in prison under federal guidelines.